History is not a Hallmark card. Scholars condemn Trump's Smithsonian review. Historians and other scholars are pushing back against the Trump administration's plan to conduct a comprehensive internal review of several Smithsonian museums with the apparent aim of making sure the institution's exhibits and collections align with cultural interpretations and historical views favored by President Trump. The review, which comes ahead of next year's 250th anniversary celebration of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, what a freak show that's going to be, sparked almost immediate criticism from academic organizations and individual scholars who see its focus on promoting Americanism as a threat to both the independence of the institution and the accuracy of its content. In a letter to Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie Bunch, White House officials Lindsay Halligan, Vince Halley, and Russell Vaught wrote that the review, quote, aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions, unquote. The Smithsonian Review is to occur in phases, with the first one covering the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of Natural History, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of the American Indian, the National Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the National Portrait Gallery, and the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden. The letter lays out a timeline for the initial review process to be completed with specific 30, 75, and 120-day goals. Quote, within 120 days, museums should begin implementing content corrections where necessary, replacing divisive or ideologically driven language with unifying, historically accurate, and constructive descriptions across placards, wall didactics, digital displays, and other public-facing materials, the letter states. The review, which is to be conducted by individuals not yet identified, is scheduled to be completed in early 2026. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So in 2020, at the time that the African American Museum was opening, or it had opened relatively recently, they tweeted out, the Smithsonian tweeted out, at a time when the soul of our country is being tested, our Talking About Race portal will help individuals and communities foster constructive conversations and much needed dialogue about one of our nation's most challenging topics, racism and its corrosive impact. All right, well, that sounds fair enough. This is how they went about it. In Smithsonian race guidelines, rational thinking and hard work are white values. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture recently unveiled guidelines for talking about race. A graphic displayed in the guidelines entitled Aspects and Assumptions of Whiteness in the United States declares that rational thinking and hard work, among others, are white values. In the section, Smithsonian declares that objective, rational, linear thinking, quantitative emphasis, hard work before play, and various other values are aspects and assumptions of whiteness. Now, we definitely did cover this at the time that this was blowing up in 2021. I remember covering it. As many people pointed out, as many Black people pointed out, this was very racist against Black people. The idea that the rugged individualism is white, the idea that having a nuclear family of a father, mother, 2 to 3 children is the ideal social unit, that's white, that these are white ideas. The funniest part of this to me was aesthetics. Steak and potatoes, bland is best. Yeah. So really, this was almost like a Bizarro Universe version of a KKK newspaper. Like it was just such ignorant stereotyping of both Black and white people. So naturally, as we pointed out at the time, this was going to inevitably empower crackpots on the other side to push an agenda that's no more based in science or history than this was. And here we are. Now, I also want to point out, I'm not going to say that this is a solution in search of a problem, except in that all I can say is I was at these museums just a few months ago. At the time that they put that up, that was really the height of woke. That was really the height of theory, of critical race theory, of gender theory. They really were feeling themselves at that time, and they really got out over their skis. They really thought they could get away with anything like that because no one was stopping them. There was enough pushback. I just went to the African American Museum, that's a few months ago. That shit is not in there. I was looking for things like that. It was an African American history museum. Like, what do you want it to, like, not condemn slavery? Like, what do you want? If you have a problem with the African American Museum as it is now, that I experienced in September, you're probably a racist. Like, there was nothing wrong with it other than I thought they got to the party late in terms of acquiring artifacts. Like, a lot of the stuff has already been bought up by other museums, so I thought it was a little understocked. That was about all I could say negative about it. It was fine. It was fine. It was like the American History Museum itself, that she seems to be talking about the entrance of, it was pretty patriotic, man. Like, what do you not want them to cover slavery? Like, what do you want? Really, I went in there with an eye to see if they had done a lot of this kind of revisionist history on the exhibits. Nah, man. I thought it leaned patriotic. I thought it leaned in that direction. The only thing I thought veered off into that was in the popular culture section. That's where they have Dorothy's slippers and the Archie Bunker chair. For the newer stuff, they definitely leaned into things that when you've just been looking at Joe Louis, when you've just been looking at all of these, just legendary figures in American history, and Louis Armstrong. And then they're trying to say Ellen DeGeneres coming out. Like, no one's going to know who Ellen DeGeneres was in 20 years. I promise you. Trying to pump up the Michael Burnham character on Star Trek Discovery. Like, you've just seen some of the most legendary people in American history. There are all these exhibits about them. And then you get to that, and yeah, they're trying a little too hard at that point to pretend that these things are going to be much more lasting than they are and not seen as a trend of their historical moment. Other than that, I thought it was fine. Like, you don't see a lot of this there. So what is their idea going to be of reforming it? It's going to be completely going ahistorical, batshit crazy in a different direction. And we already have some indication of what their idea of a museum that would conform to their standards would look like, because they already have a mini version of it. The White House has a preferred alternative to PBS. It may already be in countless classrooms. PragerU. PragerU. Amid the stripping of federal funds last month, the White House debuted a new educational partner at its launch event for its new Founders Museum exhibit, PragerU, a nonprofit organization that specializes in creating right-leaning educational short videos for adults and children. Department of Education Secretary Linda McMahon introduced the partnership, followed by PragerU CEO Marissa Straight. For the White House exhibit, PragerU created AI-generated videos of the founding fathers delivering patriotic accounts of the revolution. In one, an AI-generated John Adams borrows a catchphrase from conservative pundit Ben Shapiro and tells the viewer, facts do not care about our feelings. Wow. That sounds like they're really going to correct the problem of not telling people accurate history, doesn't it? So they've already collaborated on some museum where they have quotes from Ben Shapiro being put in the mouths of the founders. I'd be very surprised after this review of the Smithsonian if they do not bring PragerU on as a partner for their vision of what the Smithsonian should look like, which will make the Smithsonian really an object of derision and kind of camp humor, I think, around the world. I think at that point, foreign tourists will go to the Smithsonian to laugh at this kind of idiocracy museum that they would create. So let's get an idea of what kinds of educational videos that PragerU puts out. Because the idea here is you're going to tell accurate history, right? Accurate history. So here's Frederick Douglass telling school children about the nuances of slavery.
Our founding fathers knew that slavery was evil and wrong, and they knew that it would do terrible harm to the nation. They wanted it to end, but their first priority was getting all 13 colonies to unite as one country. The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise to achieve something great, the making of the United States. It was America that began the conversation to end it. But Leo is correct that big problems need to be approached very carefully. Have you kids heard of William Lloyd Garrison?
No. Nope.
He's an abolitionist like me, and he and I used to be friends, but we aren't any longer. We don't agree how to solve problems. William refuses all compromises, demands immediate change, and if he doesn't get what he wants, he likes to set things on fire.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds like you know the type.
Yeah, we've got that type in our time.
So, you're trying to work for change inside of the American system.
Precisely, Layla. Our system is wonderful, and the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. We just need to convince enough Americans to be true to it.
And did you know that George Floyd was high on fentanyl?
And there are serious questions from the autopsy report around whether Derek Chauvin killed him at all. Okay, all right. So you might watch this and say, yeah, okay, well, maybe that is more historically accurate. Maybe Frederick Douglass was more conciliatory about slavery than Garrison, and maybe this is a history the libs don't want to contend with, that Frederick Douglass saw things this way. Well, not so much. Not so much. Says David Heath. Here are Frederick Douglass's true feelings about the birth of the nation. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciation of tyrants brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him more bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Doesn't sound like his answer to the founding fathers making a compromise in order to found the nation was nuanced on this point. Doesn't sound like he felt, well, they did what they had to do. That doesn't sound like his point of view. Now, whatever your personal thoughts are about the point of view presented in the PragerU video, if what you are arguing is that you want to get the liberal bias out of history because you want accurate history taught. Well, clearly, putting the words in that video in the mouth of the man who wrote that is not historically accurate. It is not accurate to what Frederick Douglass actually thought. So if your interest is in teaching accurate history insofar as it is knowable, this is clearly not the answer. Here's another banger from PragerU where cuddly Christopher Columbus talks about how you kind of got to give people a pass for the times that they lived in.
Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal?
It's like
Yeah,
so scary.
I shit you not. I shit you not. Okay, so for one thing, when Columbus landed in the Caribbean, there were about 250,000 Arawaks. Within a few years, there were 500 of them left, and within 20 years, they were wiped out, completely wiped out, wiped off the face of the earth. So even what he's saying there historically, isn't it better to be alive as a slave? Not well. They didn't get to answer that question because
Right.
Columbus killed them all. They were all killed by Columbus or through the actions of Columbus. Now they're also suggesting that at that time everyone saw things through this lens, that nobody understood how bad what Columbus was doing was. Now, you could perhaps make that argument about slavery, although you couldn't universalize it in that way. There were always people who understood that slavery was wrong. Even if you go into ancient times, you have some people who saw slavery as an evil. So it's, but you want to say it was culturally normalized at that time? Okay. Not in regards to what Columbus did. And we have the evidence of it. This is from Bartolome de las Casas, a Franciscan friar who traveled with Columbus's voyage. Quote, thus husbands and wives were together only once every 8 or 9 months, and when they meet, they are so exhausted and depressed on both sides, they cease to procreate. As for the newly born, they died early because their mothers, overworked and famished, had no milk to nurse them. And for this reason, while I was in Cuba, 7,000 children died in 3 months. Some mothers even drowned their babies from sheer desperation. In this way, husbands died in the mines, wives died at work, and children died from lack of milk. And in a short time, this land, which was so great, so powerful and fertile, was depopulated. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature, and now I tremble as I write. Even if you accept the formulation that slavery was normalized at that time, and you do have to take that into your perspective on how you judge people at that time, Columbus was recalled, and in 2006, they uncovered from the archives the court documents of witnesses, because it was kind of, everyone knew that he had been removed from the governorship. It was kind of murky in history why. It turns out he was brutal by the standards of the time. By the standards of the time. Witnesses against him were describing the rampant murder, mutilation, and sexual assault of the natives as evidence against him. That's part of what he was being tried for. So you're going to do a cuddly cartoon video of Columbus going, hey, you know, everyone was doing it.
At the time, it was a no big deal.
And here's, if you don't find that convincing, if you think the priest was just, a snowflake or something. Here's Columbus in his own words. Like, we have his diaries. We don't have to speculate on what he thought. While I was in the boat, I captured a very beautiful Carib woman whom the said Lord Admiral gave to me. When I had taken her to my cabin, she was naked, as was their custom. I was filled with a desire to take my pleasure with her, and attempted to satisfy my desire. She was unwilling and so treated me with her nails that I wished I had never begun. But to cut a long story short, I then took a piece of rope and whipped her soundly, and she let forth such incredible screams that you would not have believed your ears. Eventually, we came to such terms, I assure you, that you would have thought that she had been brought up in a school for whores. So for
You
people,
voted for the Andrew Cuomo.
yeah, so what do you want? I'm Italian.
Italian.
So for people who want to argue for the oh, these people who want to judge Columbus, oh, they're snowflakes, he was from his time, these crazy liberals, is that really what you want to get behind? Like, even if you're an Italian American, and this is generally an Italian American thing more than a native Italian thing, that this idealization of Columbus, is that really how you want to be represented? You really want to represent yourself based on this genocidal assaulter, to use the YouTube safe term for the word that I want to use? Is that really what you want to be connected to? And going back to this question of, well, the libs distorted history, they did. We've done whole segments on this. This is not the answer. When I spoke against that, it was because I'm actually an honest actor who critiqued all that, because I really do want to see real history. I really, and hey, yeah, it's hard, and there are biases. You have a lot of the same questions with history that you have with journalism. Is it possible to be truly objective? You want to say that that's an ideal standard that we can't achieve. Okay, I think history, the effort to write accurate history, is made better by centering that ideal, just as I think journalism is made better by focusing on that ideal. Even if it gets it wrong, it's going to be closer to something that is accurate, and it's based on some honest analysis of actual facts and records, and you try not to bring an ideological bias into it. This is not the answer. And people who are telling you that they want to teach accurate history, who would get in bed with an organization that would literally put out a video of Frederick Douglass signing off on slavery among the founders, that's not the answer. That's not the answer if what you want is accurate history. If what you want is something that's just as distorted, but that comforts you personally, this is the way to go. And you know what? That's a pretty good description of Trump's base. Certainly what remains of it post Epstein files. So that's who this is for. But you go in this direction, you are going to turn one of our most storied institutions into a laughing stock around the world.
All right. Well, don't take this the wrong way, but I've decided not to go to the Blues Museum with you. After that. You could do that after I leave. We'll go to a baseball game or something. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just going to be too much. But yeah. We'll go to Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are playing the Pirates on Tuesday. Maybe we'll go there.
Are they?
Yeah.
I would do that.
So, yeah, that might be a little more my speed. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, look, the obsession with rehabilitating America's image, especially at this time, just shows you what their priorities are.
Right.
Like, I mean, that is really, and this has been a long standing, mission on the right, has been to just absolve America entirely, to avoid any sort of honest reckoning, and then seizing upon liberal overreach in the opposite direction. And yeah, I mean, we got to a point where that became the politics of liberalism, because they reached this sort of end of history phase with the elevation of a guy like Barack Obama, who obviously refused to in any way challenge the structures that kept people under the boot of power in America. And so all politics became a struggle for representation, which means, yes, a way of that in a way is another way of absolving America. Wokeness is also a mission to absolve and whitewash the United States project, because it takes a lot of the real power dynamics out of it, right? It makes us feel like, no, within this system, within the American system, like Frederick Douglass mentions in the cartoon, we can conquer these power structures. You actually don't need revolutionary movements, right? You can work within the system, that the system is redeemable on its own terms. And so in that way, they very much are symbiotic. They need each other in order to thrive. Yeah.
Please clap.